Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for this session entitled Bold Steps for a Sustainable MENA. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Nadine Hani. I present the business news on Al Arabiya and Al Arabiya Business, broadcasting out of Dubai and Riyadh, and it is such a pleasure to be here with you once again in Davos to moderate this session. Before we start, I'd like to note that this session has been developed jointly by Al Arabiya and WEF, and this is why it is being right now broadcasted on Al Arabiya Business and live streamed on all of the Al Arabiya platforms on social media. So as for our discussion over the next 45 minutes, it's a very important topic for our part of the world. A few weeks back, the UAE hosted COP28, which closed having reached a landmark deal to transition away from fossil fuels, which represents a first after decades of climate talks and negotiations. The MENA region holds 52% of global oil reserves, 43% of global gas reserves, and accounts for 1/3 of global energy trade. But after decades of dependency on fossil fuels, major economies in the Middle East and North Africa are investing heavily in energy diversification with a focus on renewables and climate-friendly technologies. So given the region's aspirations to meet climate goals and its strong potential in becoming a clean energy export hub, how can it realize its sustainability agenda? To discuss this theme, we have a great lineup of speakers. Please join me in welcoming His Excellency, Mr. Adel Al-Jubair, Minister of State for Foreign Affairs and member of the Council of Ministers and Envoy for Climate Affairs of Saudi Arabia. We have also with us Dr. Saeed Al-Thaqri, Minister of Economy of the Sultanate of Oman, Her Excellency Mrs. Noor Al-Khlif, Minister of Sustainable Development of Bahrain, Mr. Rafael Grossi, Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna, and Mr. Marco Arcelli, the CEO of Aqua Power, Saudi Arabia. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here with us today. Before we start our discussion, for our online audiences who would like to share about us, please do use the hashtag WEF24 on social media. And for the audience in the room, I will give you the opportunity to address your questions to our speakers a little bit later on, so please start preparing them. So, Your Excellency, let's start with you. Saudi Arabia has traditionally been known for exporting oil, and it has a cost advantage when it comes to hydrocarbons. But now it has set up sustainability goals, carbon neutrality by 2060. Can you explain to us this transition, why, and what are the kingdom's objectives?
Because it's necessary. We believe that the world needs to find alternative sources of energy. We have been making this point since the 1980s. Oil is a finite resource. There's only so much of it. There's only so much of it that can be produced. And the world's need for energy keeps expanding. And that extra need for energy has to be accommodated using alternative sources of energy. Renewables are a clear favorite, and we are big investors. We don't see ourselves as an oil exporter, we see ourselves as an energy exporter. And that includes not only oil and gas, but it also includes green energy, renewable energy, solar, wind, hydro, and we're working in that direction. Saudi Arabia is also very cognizant and very concerned about the issue of climate change, and we are a responsible actor in the global community, and we want to not follow the standards. We want to set the standards for how countries should conduct themselves and what responsibilities they take on and what objectives they set and what programs and initiatives they put in place domestically, regionally, and internationally to help meet the challenge of climate change. And we've been doing this in Saudi Arabia, and our record speaks for itself, and we're doing it in a public manner. We have allocated tremendous resources to this. We have not only in terms of our time and effort, all of these initiatives are managed directly by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince Prime Minister Prince Mohammed bin Salman, but we've also allocated a substantial amount of financial resources to put behind this. In the Saudi Green Initiative alone, we have allocated more than $186 billion towards this effort. We're also working with small island nations. We're working with developing countries to help them adopt a circular carbon economy approach so they can deal with the issue of climate change. So yes, we are the world's largest exporter of oil, and we are very proud of it. And oil will continue to be a major source of energy for the world. But as the world's largest exporter of oil, we also want to be a leader in dealing with renewable energy and in dealing and confronting the issue of climate change, and we want to set the example for others to emulate.
Your Excellency, how difficult is it to change the image of Saudi Arabia from... Saudi is a big player when it comes to OPEC, OPEC Plus, very vocal player. How difficult is it to change the image globally to an exporter of renewables rather than hydrocarbons?
It's not about changing the image. It's about improving our planet. It's about making our planet safer for our children and grandchildren. It's about setting an example for others to emulate. The image issue doesn't concern us. It concerns how others see us. And if you want to see the reality of Saudi Arabia, great. And if you don't want to see the reality of Saudi Arabia, so what? Life goes on. We will continue to do what we do. We will excel at what we do. We will set an example for others. And we will test what we do and measure it against anyone else with our head held high.
Your Excellency, Dr. Sakhri, also Oman is a major exporter of oil and has set for itself carbon neutrality targets. Why is that, and what are your targets?
Well, I would also suggest that it is very important for us to move away from fossil dependence to renewables for the sake of the globe, for the sake of the global community. We are all responsible to safeguard the future of the world, for the sake of our children, grandchildren, for the sake of the natural environment that sustains us. So yes, we have to move away from fossil fuel dependence to renewables. And indeed, in Oman, we have set targets to decrease our emissions. This includes issues like decreasing the fugitive emissions. This includes, looking into, how much, oil sector activities and LNG activities are emitting, and to reduce this. Our goal is basically we have already, the government has already announced, by 2050, our objective is to be carbon neutral by then. And I think the path to that objective has already been set. We have a national plan. We have also established a center for sustainability. The objective of the center is to make sure that we meet the objective of reaching net zero and carbon neutrality by 2050.
Your Excellency, Mrs. Al-Khalif, what about Bahrain, especially that you are in the unique position of heading a ministry responsible for sustainable development in Bahrain?
Of course. I think I just want to start by saying that COP28 was a great opportunity for Bahrain to align and solidify the plans that we've put into place. The delegation was headed by His Majesty the King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, who announced Blueprint Bahrain, which is really our national plan to action the targets that were set a couple of years ago during COP26, which was to achieve net zero by 2060 and set a number of interim targets to reduce emissions by 30% by 2035, double the tree coverage or afforestation, double the targets for renewables, quadruple mangrove coverage in Bahrain. And so far, we're seeing results in 2022, 2023. We're exceeding those targets. So it's a great opportunity to show that transformation has started, and Bahrain is part of the global transformation. But as you said, as a Minister of Sustainable Development, I always have to take a step back and really look at sustainability as more than just the environmental transformation. For us, the easy thing that we say always is sustainability in Bahrain is SDGs++. So we adopted the SDGs, of course, and we're progressing in trying to achieve those SDGs by 2030. But we have another set of targets to achieve, and examples of those is our economic transformation. That is one of the key initiatives that we've been working on over a couple of decades now to transform the economy and become less reliant on the oil. So that's one of the examples that shows that Bahrain is not new. Transformation is not new to Bahrain. We're used to that transformation. We're used to looking at the challenges and opportunities and moving forward with the plans that we set. And just on that also, so for us, the oil sector it used to be the biggest sector by far. Based on the latest results on the GDP, it's no longer the biggest sector at the moment. We have the financial services sector that is the biggest, and the non-oil sector is about 83% in Bahrain. So just the point that I wanted to make is that transformation has to happen, and that transformation needs to be an overall sustainability transformation that takes into account the economic impact, the social impact, as well as the environmental.
Mr. Grossi, you say that net zero needs nuclear power. To what extent can nuclear power applications help the MENA region achieve its sustainability targets?
I think it is already doing that. In fact, in your introductory remarks, you referred to COP, and the Minister has just said that. And we've seen what we've seen at COP28 is a return to realism, in the sense that for the first time, after 28 conferences, there has been a recognition and an agreement in the final text that nuclear energy is not only part of the solution, should be accelerated. And the MENA region did not wait for this text to be agreed to start in this direction. And we've seen the very, very important example of the Emirates, where already now, today, as we speak, 25% of the energy of the Emirates is nuclear, coming from zero nuclear, nothing, in 2005, when they took the decision, to now having a full-fledged nuclear sector, complete with a regulator for nuclear power plants operating, and so on. We've seen the same. We have started, and the Minister is there, with Saudi Arabia, important conversations aiming at introducing in the kingdom also nuclear power pretty soon. We see already, since we talk about MENA, not only the Gulf, we see what's happening in Egypt, where Egypt has already started building nuclear power plants. We see Jordan, where a research reactor is in operation, and there are very firm plans to move on, and I suppose that we will be seeing more in other countries. So this is part of what the distinguished ministers were referring as the region realizing that we are moving on to a new phase in our collective evolution, and this region is not going to wait until it's too late, and it's taking.
And it helps that there are the financial means. So there's the ambition, and there's the financial means, and the determination to make it happen.
Which is rare, because in other parts of the world where I am active and I'm trying to help, many countries would wish to have this level of resources to move with their projects. Talking about sub-Saharan Africa, I'm talking about certain parts of Latin America, I'm talking about certain parts of Asia, even Europe, where we are, where some countries are still looking into ways, and this is also part of what the IEA is trying to do, by helping the international finance institution to get attuned to these new realities. But what I see in MENA, what I see in the Gulf is extremely promising, and the IEA is there to help from the beginning.
Mr. Arcelli, you are the representative of the private sector on this panel. Interesting enough, I was checking the figures. The MENA region is warming at 2 times the global average. This means it could disastrously impact water supply, agriculture. And yet, if we look at the private sector, only 12% of companies in the MENA region have net zero targets. So what needs to be done to mobilize more climate action at the level of the private sector?
So I think that there you need to distinguish between companies and the size, because if you look at all the major companies in Saudi Arabia and the region, they do have climate objectives, and particularly the big companies with big emissions. So I think that we should start from this positive note. The second thing, it's interesting that you mentioned about the disproportionate increase of temperature in Saudi Arabia. I think that one of the most interesting initiatives that I have found, I just moved to the region 10 months ago, and I'm extremely taken away by everything that is going on. It's the Saudi Green Initiative to plant 1 billion trees, which we're contributing to. I give you this example of one solution that we adopted for the Red Sea Global, which is going to be one of the biggest and most beautiful tourist attractions in the world. The first hotels have started operation. So we are responsible as Aqua Power to deliver all the utilities, the power, the water that we desalinate using 100% renewable power. The power is 100% renewable, and that is already something unique, an off-grid solution, 500 megawatt, totally sustainable 24 hours a day. But what interests me the most is actually the wastewater treatment system. So you take all the sludge from the resorts, the hotels, the staff camps, lodgings, and you take that, you put it in these basins, basically, where they leave the nutrients, they grow forest of mangrove. And then the water is discharged and go to the nurseries that will grow 30 million trees for the landscaping. A lot of Saudi Arabia is going to be turned green by these initiatives, and that is part of the goal, basically, to reduce also locally the impact of global warming.
When it comes to aqua power, what are your targets when it comes to sustainability?
We have a net zero 2050, like many companies, but I think that what we like to work on is really the short term, because 2050 is a long time away. And really, if you think about the technological improvements we've had in the past 30 years, 40 years, I don't know what technologies will be available to me in 2040 that I can use and maybe will be so efficient and so dramatically good. So we focus on targets in the short term. Saudi Arabia is a 50-50 renewables and gas power generation by 2030. We want to meet that and we want to exceed that. And we have so far achieved not only to reach these goals, we grew to about 46% already of our portfolio being green, but we have achieved on the way the lowest cost in producing power, renewable power, at almost 1 cent per kilowatt hour in solar PV. We have realized also the lowest cost of desalination, which is very important, and also integrating solar power into the desalination. So today, in large scale, 30% of the power is from solar power, so it's a green water that we're doing. We're bringing all the different technologies from the world, from India, China, Germany, everywhere from around the world to achieve these results and make us one of the most competitive, one of the most efficient operator in the industry today. So His Excellency was saying that Saudi Arabia is today one of the largest or the largest exporter of oil. I would say that today Saudi Arabia is also the largest exporter of low carbon expertise. We're bringing it around the world. We're in 14 countries. And so we help the global south to decarbonize because 90% of the energy growth is there. And when I talk to companies and financing companies from the global north, they don't come yet to the non-OECD. So I think that that is the biggest contribution that we're bringing.
So we talked about the goals. Let's talk about how to make it happen. Your Excellency, Mr. Jubair, Saudi Arabia and Aramco developed the Circular Carbon Economy Framework involving the 4 Rs, reduce, reuse, recycle, and remove. Can you tell us more about how you are working to achieve that?
We're working to achieve it.
How?
And you can see it. You capture carbon, you recycle it, you use it to make your production more efficient, you reuse it, and then you store it and you turn it into, you sequester it so that you store it permanently. That's what we do. So we're working on having it at an industrial scale so we can remove carbon from the air. But the circular carbon economy is not just about that. It's more comprehensive than this. It also involves other aspects of the economy. It's a holistic approach that involves what we just talked about. It involves producing energy more efficiently, more cleanly. It involves using energy more efficiently, more cleanly. It involves reducing waste. It involves redesigning of your cities to make them more efficient. It involves natural solutions in terms of designating areas to be protected and restoring wildlife and making sure you don't have erosions of soil. It involves planting of trees. It involves use of alternative sources of energy, renewable energy. So it's a complete holistic approach. And we apply this in terms of the various initiatives that we have in Saudi Arabia, as well as which are part of the Saudi Green Initiative, as well as in our Middle East Green Initiative, which involves more than 20 countries in the region, in the Middle East and in North Africa, where we work with countries on how they can adopt a similar approach to reversing desertification, to working on planting, in order to improve environment and improve the quality and confront the challenges of climate change. So we're doing this. We also go beyond our region, working globally We set up the Global Water Organization in terms of more efficient use of water and providing more access to more people of clean, usable water. We think that that's also part of this effort. We also are working on methane pledge, and we're working on plastics in the ocean, and so you name it, we do it, and we see all of it as part of this effort that we put under the rubric of a circular carbon economy. It's not just one aspect of it. It's a comprehensive and a holistic effort, and you see it when you, not only in Saudi Arabia, you see it in countries around the region, and the impact that Saudi Arabia's effort has had in those areas.
There's also the carbon credits market, which I think you've started with it as a voluntary market. What are your plans in that area?
I think this is really something that is more the purview of my finance colleagues. But the key is really we want to educate countries and people about the value of their assets. For example, an elephant is worth something, a whale is worth something, a tree is worth something, a giraffe is worth something. How much value can you get out of these assets without cutting down the tree or hunting the elephant? There are markets that are developed, and it has gone beyond NGOs trying to give donations, and it's now involves global financiers who see value in this. Mangroves have a value. If you preserve them, you can sell the credits for X amount per year, which means the value, capital value of these mangroves is X, and you can realize this today without removing them, or if it's animals, without hunting them, and if it's trees, without cutting them down. And that part is evolving, and we are working with both people in the financial markets as well as developing countries to educate them about this and the benefits of this. And I think it's still in its infancy, but it will be emerging, and it'll be one of the tools that I believe will go a long way towards providing value to countries and allowing countries to realize the value of what they have.
It was interesting, in the first auction that happened, Saudi corporates were very active in the carbon credits market. Your Excellency, Dr. Sakhri, it was interesting that the WEF has identified several countries in the MENA region as high potential countries for leading the energy transition through low carbon hydrogen projects. And one of them was Oman. So can you explain why, and what are Oman's ambitions when it comes to hydrogen?
I would say we are blessed with natural resources. Particularly, I would say we have abundance of sunshine. We have also abundance of wind. So if you combine the two, it makes Oman a very good destination for renewables. In fact, you know, the solar and wind complement each other very nicely in Oman. When there is no more actually sun, the wind picks up at night, and this is very good. It means that you have a continuous flow of power, and this is what you need. So you don't have to save, you don't have to spend a lot of money on storage capacity. So if you add that, if you look into the geographic location of Oman, it is the center of the east of the west and the west. And we have been investing also in infrastructure development. We have state-of-the-art infrastructure. So if you take all of that, this makes Oman a very attractive and good option for international investor. And we think that is something that the world and experts have recognized.
Can you tell us some projects that Oman is doing in the hydrogen space?
Yes, actually, Energy Development Oman has established a subsidiary, Hydrom. And the objective of Hydrom actually is to delineate government land area that to be used for world-class hydrogen projects. In March 2023, actually, Hydrom has signed agreements that worth more than $30 billion with many developers from Europe, from Asia, from within the region. So I think the pathway to green hydrogen and is an opportunity for Oman really to strengthen its economy, to diversify its economy, to make the industrial sector more competitive. And I also think this is also an opportunity for investors to come in and take advantage of all the, I would say, the natural advantages that we have, and also the complementarity that we have as a government, including legislation, including infrastructure that we have been developing.
It's interesting that you are talking about this in the World Economic Forum in Davos, which is a wide audience of interested investors, probably. Mrs. Lakhleif, in Bahrain also we said that you have the goals, the sustainability goals. Can you give us, we're talking about now about how to make them happen, so can you give us some specific initiatives that you have to achieve those goals?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just to touch on what Their Excellencies, the ministers, have mentioned, in Bahrain it's a similar story as well. So when I mentioned Blueprint Bahrain, which is our blueprint to achieve our targets for net zero. And the key pillars of that is the mitigation, adaptation, and the investment. So similar story what has been said. On the mitigation side, it is how do I move into a low carbon economy? So we have our national energy strategy, which was launched actually as part of our economic recovery plan post-COVID, which launched a number of key sector strategies, one of which is the energy sector. And it basically looks into how do I increase the efficiency of the current energy sources, how do I diversify and create a portfolio of alternative energy resources that are affordable, secure, and sustainable. So that's on the mitigation side. On the adaptation as well, so we have a national adaptation investment plan, which looks into water security, protection of the ecosystem. It looks at the coastline being an island. That's another thing that Bahrain has been working on for years. And the afforestation and the plantation of the mangrove is a big part of protecting the coastline of Bahrain. And the last part of that blueprint is the investment side. And this is also what Their Excellencies touched on, is how do I continue to create sustainable opportunities in my new lower carbon emission economy. And that investment requires, again, having the right infrastructure in terms of the legislation. It requires financial commitment, which is available considering Bahrain is a financial hub in the region. It requires training the people. It requires investing in the right technology. And that's a big conversation that's been happening in WEF as well. So that's all of those elements working together is basically the plan to achieve the net zero targets.
Mr. Arcelli, on the sidelines of COP28, 14 companies came together from the MENA region and signed a joint communique for climate action in MENA. Can you explain to us what was in that communique? What does it involve?
I think it reflects also on your previous point. So there is a strong participation by the private sector to change positively not only the MENA region, but the rest of the world. I think that in the MENA region today, we have a number of companies, so not just us, but we have Masdar, we have Taka, we have companies from all the countries basically that are contributing positively, and we want to continue to do that. Our ambition is to build on the strong goals, climate goals that every country in the region has established to leverage the volumes that we can source and drive innovation, drive efficiency, drive R&D, so that we can then not only do it cheaper and we can do it more sustainable, we can do it faster and we can do it everywhere.
I have a question about NAIM and its hydrogen projects. I don't know if you or Your Excellency, Mr. Al-Jubair, would like to explain to us the projects of NAIM in the hydrogen space?
I leave it to the private sector.
Yeah, we're one of the 3 shareholders of the NEOM Green Hydrogen Project together with NEOM and with Air Products. By the way, we also just broke ground in November on the 2nd green hydrogen project for us in Uzbekistan, where we partner with the local fertilizer company. And I mention it because I think it shows basically how this project, that is a first of a kind in the world, It's the largest green hydrogen, green ammonia project targeted fully for export. It will export more than 1.2 million tons of green ammonia per year around the world. It will be marketed by Air Products, and it's really first of a kind. It's an $8.5 billion investment where we have elected to do project financing for 6.4. It's important, this, because it shows the confidence of the whole financing industry. We chose not to have regional banks only, but we have banks from Japan, from Europe, from the United States, because this way we have created a package that we can replicate. So on one side is the technological, the technical optimization. We are using 4 gigawatt of renewable energy, 400 megawatt of megawatt hour of battery storage to fuel 2 gigawatt of electrolyzers. Of course, the dimension of each could change. The reason why we chose it was to achieve the lowest cost of this energy. On one side, the technical, on the other side, the financing and the contractual structure. First project of a kind. It will start production in 2026. We already invested more than 2 billion in the project among all of us. But then what happened is that in Uzbekistan, from going from a concept to groundbreaking was less than 1 year. So you build on this experience and you can replicate elsewhere.
Scale.
That's what I'm saying, that Saudi Arabia today is the biggest low-carbon technology exporter in the world.
Excellent. Mr. Grossi, we are talking that nuclear has to be part of the solution. It was interesting that on the sidelines of COP28, the IAEA advocated for the responsible advancement of innovative technologies, including small modular reactors. Can you explain to us how small modular reactors can be part of the solution and shed light also on the cost as well, and who is eligible, who are eligible players for that?
In principle, everybody. But let's say the following. We are a technology-driven activity, of course, and nuclear technology is evolving constantly, not only in the traditional reactors that you may be familiar with, but also in new trends. And among those are these small modular reactors. And I think you have everything in the name. They are smaller in capacity, smaller in their output. But interestingly, the modularity and the fact that you may be changing in the nuclear energy business model from big projects built on site to reactors that will be built in modules and could be produced in another country to be bought, imported to another. What does this have is a huge impact in the sense that countries may not necessarily build a huge technological infrastructure or have capacities beyond the minimum necessary, and of course to operate and having regulators to be able to benefit from this kind of technology. And this is why there is huge interest in that. There are many countries, especially the big nuclear vendors that you may have in mind, the United States, Russia, China, South Korea, the United Kingdom, France, Argentina is building one SMR. And so a few countries that are mature in technology are trying to put that into the market. Interestingly, and hearing what I hear here, many countries are thinking about SMRs for specific reasons. For example, hydrogen production. For example, desalination. For example, powering international artificial intelligence plants, database platforms, which are tremendously hungry in terms of power consumption. So there is a whole new model which is developing, and where we see new vistas, we see new opportunities. And as I was saying, the main thing here, and we are trying to help countries that would like to accede to this technology, to have the necessary elements to, first of all, assess their basic needs to host these nuclear power plants and what is needed in this regard. So as you can see, nuclear will be evolving in different ways, continuing what we have towards long-term operation that will be soon approaching 100 years, a century of operation of a nuclear power plant, then having new models, new generations of the current reactors, then the smaller reactors, and perhaps even including fusion as part of the combination of available alternatives as part of the solution.
Are there any adopters of that technology right now in the MENA? Are there any initiatives in that space? Anyone working on that?
There are lots of conversations about that.
But not anything that
Nothing
has started
concrete
yet.
so far. There are many advanced, I mean, with us and also commercially, and we are not part of that. We are aware of that, of course.
You would know.
Because vendors talk to us and countries talk to us because, of course, the IEA, in a certain sense, is a service to member states. So we are like a consultant for countries that come to us because they are being quite actively, I didn't want to use the word aggressively, but quite actively approached by many vendors that are showing their products. You know, yesterday I was participating in an event with Bill Gates. Bill Gates has a company that is producing a small modular reactor, and Rolls-Royce is doing that, and many companies are doing that. So, which means that this is not a project for a vague, distant, undefined future.
The supply is there,
but rather that there's something that is going to happen, and a very exciting thing, which I believe could have incredibly interesting possibilities for the MENA region, because not every country in this region is going to go or may be interested in going for a big package like the Emirates or perhaps Saudi Arabia will do, because they are interested in this kind of thing. So it may be interesting for countries producing hydrogen, for countries, of course, in this region with a tremendous need for desalination, and you know, so all these specific needs that will be catered for by SMRs.
Let's take a few questions from the audience before we continue. If you have a question for our speakers, please let me know so that we can pass on a microphone. Can we pass on a microphone? Please, for the camera's sake, I would ask you to stand up, please, and ask your question. Is it possible to stand up?
Yeah, sure.
That's what they asked me to ask you.
No problem. Hi, Barak Aviv from Axios in the US. Question about Saudi Arabia and its interest in civilian nuclear program, to both the Minister and Mr. Grossi. First, Minister, if Saudi Arabia wants civilian nuclear energy, why does it need a uranium enrichment program on its soil when other countries like the UAE and others did not need that for civilian nuclear energy? And Mr. Grossi, you said that you're discussing this issue with Saudi Arabia. I guess you're discussing it also with the Biden administration. What does the agency think about a civilian nuclear program with a uranium enrichment program on Saudi soil? Thank you.
Minister, you want to start?
It's very simple. We have large deposits of uranium in Saudi Arabia, and we want to be able to take advantage of it economically. We don't want people to pick up our dirt and move it and realize the value of it and the industry of it and the associated industry and the ripple effects of it outside Saudi Arabia. We want the jobs in Saudi Arabia, we want the industry in Saudi Arabia, because we have the resources in the kingdom. We have no problem in terms of international safeguards, and we have conversations with the International Atomic Energy Agency about this issue. We can satisfy whatever requirements they have. But this is something between us and them, and we will do this. And I'm not going to negotiate with you on this, with all due respect. I'm certainly not here, nor am I the person to negotiate this. We have our own experts. But I can tell you that as a country that has large resources and potentially tremendously large resources of uranium in the country, we are not going to let people pick up the dirt and refine it and do everything value added there, and we end up with 5 cents out of 100 cents. We want the value added in Saudi Arabia. We want the jobs in Saudi Arabia. We want the associated industries in Saudi Arabia. That's a very reasonable request. We are merchants, and we want the profits in Saudi Arabia. And we of course need the nuclear energy, but we believe that there is a way to do so that satisfies the requirements of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and that also provides us with the value added and with the industry and with the jobs that are needed that will help us move forward, and that will be part of our energy mix. What's so illogical about this? If we didn't have any uranium, the story might be different. But we have uranium resources in Saudi Arabia that we want to be able to exploit. We are and see ourselves as an energy exporter to the world. We want to be able to sell you the nuclear energy that you can then plug in and get energy out of it. We want to sell you oil, and we want to sell you gas. We want to sell you green energy, renewable energy. We want to sell you the whole litany of energy products.
Let's have a comment from Mr. Grossi.
Yes, well, that defines very clearly what the Saudi aspirations are. I can tell you I've been in discussion with the government for a long time. I was recently in Riyadh, as you know, and we have been discussing this. Our take is exactly what the minister said. Not only the kingdom, but every country in the nuclear activity needs to, as part of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, subject itself to a comprehensive safeguards agreement with the IAEA. The additional protocol is a very, very important addition, as the name says, which is commensurate to the development of the industry, to the sophistication of the industry, and to the need by countries to provide to the international community all the guarantees it needs and it deserves, that nothing related to nuclear energy is aimed at other ends than producing nuclear energy. Of course, when it comes to certain activities, you need to have very specific provisions, which could be embedded in an additional protocol. There could be other arrangements as well, but we have been very clear and I think my Saudi partners know that very well. For at the end of the day, it's me who certifies that everything is correct. So when that happens, I ask for understanding that I must make sure, and I trust everybody, but I must verify everything.
Check and recheck.
And there is no objection and no problem on that. There is going to be a very constructive, technical discussion that is going to be necessary, because what I understand from my Saudi friends, and as the minister just said, there is an ambition there to get into nuclear in a very big way, and that will require a lot of work for them, a lot of work for us.
Let's take some other questions from the audience. Can we pass on a microphone? We have 2 questions. Let's take both questions and then we answer, but I want to kindly ask you to stand up when you ask your question so that we can see you on camera.
Thank you.
Mr. Faisal Abbas.
Thank you. Question for His Excellency Adel Jubair. I want to ask specifically about solar energy, which is a topic it seems to have fallen through the cracks. I'm not sure whether the issue is a technical issue, as in the technology is not there to produce significant amount of power from solar energy, or is it an ROI issue, as in it's much more economical to go through other renewables? Thank you.
Okay, please answer the question.
I
She doesn't have a microphone.
You have one of the premier solar energy companies in the world sitting right here, and I think he can explain it to you in more technical details than I can. But solar energy for us is a priority. We have huge investments in solar energy. We have huge ambitions with regards to solar plants, and as was explained earlier, NAIM and other parts of Saudi Arabia, mega projects are getting their energy from solar energy. So it's not something that has fallen through the cracks. Quite the contrary, it's smack front and center of our renewable and sustainable energy sources in Saudi Arabia. But I would defer to Aquapower on this issue to provide you with more of the details.
Yeah, I mean, I will just add that Saudi Arabia alone, the Minister of Energy announced recently last week that they're going to award 20 gigawatt every year of renewables. The split between wind and solar is not yet fixed, but the majority of that will be solar. Until today, we have realized in Saudi Arabia, Aquapower alone, 14 gigawatt, and that's just in the span of 3-4 years. So we're going at a speed that Europe is not seeing. Europe, of course, did it before, but now the speed and the acceleration that we're seeing in the kingdom is amazing. So it's happening and fast. Recently, in December at COP, we inaugurated in Dubai, in the Emirates, the largest solar complex in the world. This is a combination of solar PV, but also the concentrated solar power that allows basically to have solar power day and night. So you store the energy as molten salt, and you use it during the night to produce steam, to produce electricity.
We have one final question, and then we'll wrap it up.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Rana Dajani. I'm a professor of molecular biology and a social innovator, a Schwab awardee, actually. I'm here representing Catalyst 2030, which is a network of social entrepreneurs, innovators around the world. We have, with others, have launched a new UN resolution last year for the social and solidarity economy. And the objective of it is to work with stakeholders, business, private sector, and governments, public sector, with the social sector, create the social innovation sector, so that we could equally be at the table to create solutions for the Sustainable Development Goals in a sustainable fashion. So my question to you, as countries from the MENA region, and I represent Catalyst for the MENA region and the social innovation.
The time is running out.
Yeah, how can we all work together, in terms of legal structures to allow the social innovation to be supported, and in terms of funding? And when I say funding, can we harness the Zakah money to reimagine it to support sustainable projects and sustainable development goals?
Who is the question to?
For everyone.
We need someone to answer. Who will volunteer?
Go ahead.
I'll take it. No, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to meet you. And I think the integration of the social aspect, the social part of society is very, very important. And more we're seeing and we're realizing where the governments are becoming more of regulators. They will set the policies, they will ensure that there is the right regulation, there is the right infrastructure. But then, and that's the case for us in Bahrain. We would rely on the private sector, we will rely on the public to actually be a part of that transformation. We see them on the table. We have those discussions together when it comes to the transformation. And when it comes maybe to the public, it's the innovation for us and the technology where we see investment in those people that will help us achieve those development goals. And actually, if you look at one of the announcements that Bahrain made during COP also is a climate tech fund that has capital of about 750 million, which is designed to invest in growth companies and innovation that will help the transition to a low carbon economy. And so that work is ongoing. Of course, I think there would be more than happy to have discussions and think more about how do you integrate it even further into the discussion.
Dr. Stakli, I want to close this panel with a question to you. There are large aspirations now in the MENA region for the development of renewables. But do you think that we are at a stage for the MENA to become an export hub for renewables? What is needed for that? Or do you think the priority now is to use this energy internally and develop industries that rely, for example, on the hydrogen produced internally in those countries?
Overall, I think the region has a lot of natural resources. I would talk about Oman. We have dedicated at least 65,000 square kilometers of land for renewables, of which 50,000 square kilometers has both solar and wind. And the potential capacity of this is more than 500 gigawatt of electricity. So I think the region is going to be, to have both, to export energy and use the energy to diversify the economy, create jobs, and the multiplier effect my colleagues have been talking about for the benefit of our economies.
On that note, I want to thank you all. Thank you to our speakers for being here with us today, and thank you for the audience for attending. Thank you.